Now we're at module 7.8. Adding process data boxes and inventory delay data to your value stream app. There are all kinds of ways to measure the process, but you get to decide that too. And remember, you get to decide what data goes into this. Okay, it can be cycle time, process time. We recommend a minimum of cycle time, changeover time, batch size if you got it, and but you get to put whatever you need to put in there. Okay? Um, I'm gonna emphasize understanding the cycle time and process time and the difference. We'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. Cycle time and process time might be the same. You can capture that. They might be different. Depends on the number of people doing the stuff and the number of units that you process at once. It's always good to keep track of the amount of time it takes to set up a piece of equipment for a different work. And again, it's all easy to see in manufacturing terms, but there are also changeovers and setups that you've got to do in administrative processes. Like you might have to purge the cache for a website. So we've got to do some setup operations in a lot of different processes. So keep that in mind. We also have delays and decisions everywhere. So we want to capture those things and always set those up so we can try to reduce them later. Here are some data elements and the way we calculate them and what they're primarily used for. Okay, so you can see the number of operators is pretty straightforward. It's the number of people who are actually in that process box. The full-time equivalent is used when a full person isn't always required for a full time. So it's going to be the number of operators multiplied by the percentage of their time that they spend on a dedicated step. It'll become a little bit clearer in a couple of the examples I'll show you in a minute. The cycle time is the average elapsed time interval between completion of units of production. So cycle time, the way I learned it, it's always a calculated average. Okay, and it captures the average elapsed interval between units leaving a process. A mathematical formula for it is to understand the process time divided by the number of FTEs. That'll give you a cycle time. Process time to me is time spent processing a unit of production as it passes through all operations. Now, it might be a process box, it might be a cell, it might be several different operations, but if it goes in one process box, even if it handles a whole bunch of different things and comes out that same process box one at a time, that's the process time is how long it takes to get from going in to going out. Okay, so cycle time is an average time of a process of a product leaving a process. The processing time is how much time it actually spends in that process. To me, you can go out and measure process time, but cycle time needs to be calculated. Machine time or machine cycle time, average time the machine's occupied. Touch time or total labor time, how many people are involved and what kind of time they deal with it. Non-value added time, time spent on activities that don't transform the product or service. There's a bunch of different ways to depict that on the map as well. Utilization is the average consumption of resources, and that is taking your cycle time divided by the takt time. This is a pretty important measure that tells you if you're over capacity or not. The process lead time or the throughput time, that's the time for the job to flow through all the processes from beginning to end. So this is going to be your promise time for a customer. If you take an order today, how long is it going to take? If you release it today into the system, how long will it take to get all the way through so you can deliver it to the customer? Some service-oriented measures might have working time, the average elapsed interval between processing a completed unit of work, batch working time, time spent working on a unit or a batch of work from beginning to end. Query quota, a measure of how often additional queries around data and information are required. And your specific organization might have a dozen different types of specific service-oriented measures. Include what's relevant. If you see things like the BWT and QQ on your map, please make sure that you explain them in a legend someplace so nobody has to ask, what's that mean? Others, value add time, batch size, first time through, second time through, whatever. Whatever you got to do, capture whatever you need to know. Changeover time, number of variants, scrap rate, availability, complete and accurate percentage, full-time equivalents, IT tools. If the data is variable, collect the minimum and maximum. Nearly all inventory backlogs are going to have some of that variation, so just don't go with just an average. Make sure you pay attention to what's going on. Don't guess. Go and get the data if you don't have it. If you can't go and get it, make a plan for how you're going to go and get it. Ask people to collect it over the next several weeks or something. There's a lot of different ways that you can get the data that you need. Not every process needs every data element, like I said. Choose what you need to understand about each process box. Use the overall objectives of the organization to give you some guide. For example, if quality is the focus, then record those quality measures, scrap rates, rework levels, etc. And you can show the data in multiple units if it helps to clarify. Okay, you can put it wherever it needs to be to make it more clear. Next up, I'm going to give you an example to help define those key data items, and it's an ice cream store.